Okay, so in this video I'll show you how to make the Pepsi logo animation. We're going to start from scratch. Let me just delete everything. So first thing that we need is our logo. So now that we have this, we can delete the extra parts that we don't need. I'm going to keep these shapes because if you notice, these are going to be the cutout for the alphabet. So let me just move these up for now, and let me join them into one mesh. Same for the alphabets down here. Let me just make them into one mesh. Now I'm going to convert these into meshes, because right now whenever you import SVGs, they are not meshes, they are curves, right? To convert it into mesh, you can either press, so by default it should be either F2 or F3 key, which goes into search, and you can just type in convert, or you can go to object, convert, and over here find mesh. Object, convert, and then mesh, and basically this gets converted into a mesh. Same thing for this, object, convert, and mesh. Now I'm going to give this some thickness, so I can use this as a boolean. To use booleans inside of Blender, make sure you have your bool add-on enabled. So go to edit, preferences, in add-ons just search for bool and make sure this is enabled. If this is enabled, if you click on this white shape and then you click on this blue shape, you go to edit, and over here go to bool tool. Under edit you should see bool tool, just go to difference, and basically that's going to cut out those holes in your letters. And then once I'm happy with it, I can just hit apply, and I can just delete this afterwards, right? So now I'm left with only the parts that I need. Let me just remove these extra layers and name this logo. Okay, so now that we have this done, we're going to set up our camera before we start doing anything. In these kind of animations, we only have to make the parts that are visible, right? We are using a 3D software, but we're going to make a 2D flat animation, right? So first, let me just rotate this on the x-axis by 90, and let me just move it in the center, something like this. Now with shift A, I'm going to add camera and just add a simple camera object, and then I'm going to move this back. Let's change this from perspective to orthographic, and if I hit 0, this is what I'm seeing right now. I'm going to adjust my scale, so basically it's more closer to the mesh. Okay, something like this, completely fine. Now I can move this up. I'm also going to change the resolution, so in your output just change this to something a bit more vertical, and let me just reframe this. So I think around here it's fine. You can play with this until you are happy with this. Okay, now with this done, we have our two objects. We can start working on the animation. I'm just going to move my camera above in this cam layer. Okay, we're going to be doing all of this in Eevee, so rendering won't be an issue. If I switch to render mode right now, we are going to get this kind of setting. So let me just change a few settings. I'm going to change my background color to solid white, something like this. I'm gonna go into render settings, go all the way down, go to color management, and instead of AGX, I'm going to use Filmic. Either use Filmic or standard, both are fine. I think standard is better. And then for look, either go for a low contrast or a medium contrast. That's completely up to you. Okay, now once we have all these settings done, we're going to convert this into mesh as well. So convert mesh, same thing, convert mesh. So now all of these are meshes, but you can see that right now they are two, uh, like they have these weird triangles. Let's just clean this up. So let me go to modifiers, add a decimate modifier, and change this to planar. Same thing with this one, decimate modifier, and make this planar. And then if I hit apply all, you can see it's going to get much neater. Same thing over here. If I apply it, it's going to get much neater. And then to make it smoother, I can add a subdivision modifier. So basically if I turn this on and off, you can see the difference. So let me just add to both of these. Okay, if you get this kind of result, that's completely normal. It happens because we have no cuts over here. So let me just see if adding a few cut fixes the issue. Okay, okay, now that we have this done, let's start with the animation. So first thing in the animation that we have is water falling down, right? To create that, we're going to use a simple cube object, and let me just scale it down, bring it around here. I think we can move this further up, so let me go into camera and just move it up, and a little bit more. Okay, I think around here is fine. Okay, so now with this cube, I'm just going to line it up as best as I can. Basically, I want this to end around here and start from over here, right? So let's say over here. And let's just move it behind our logo. So basically liquid, it's going to pour. Okay, now to make our liquid look like liquid instead of a cube, we want to add some waviness over here. So for now, let me just give it some color. So in the original video, I have the color, it's set to red and then, sorry, blue and then red as it's filling up these shapes, but I think we can go for black as well. Okay, let's go with this for now, and then later if you want to change it, we can. But for now, let's go with this. Okay, now we have our liquid. We are going to give our cube some loop cuts and basically make sure the scale is set to 111. If this is not set to 111, Blender sometimes has issues with understanding the scale of the object when you're using modifiers or using bevel or other tools. So just to make sure we don't encounter any issues, I'm going to press Ctrl A, apply scale, so it's set to 111. Now over here, I'm going to go into my modifiers tab and I'm going to add a displace modifier. It's going to make it big, it's fine. I'm going to hit new and then I'm going to go into texture parameters. Now over here, we're going to use the clouds texture, and the values that I was happy with were these. So I'm just going to copy and paste these. So once these settings are done, you can see that our mesh is right now deforming in different ways. So just to like basically have some loop cuts to make it deform properly, I'm going to add some horizontal loop cuts by pressing Ctrl R, and then with my middle mouse button I can just scroll this up, so it can be more subdivided, right? And now we're getting a much nicer and even displace, but it still looks like mess. So let's go over here and let's fix this. So first thing, I'm going to change this to object, and then I'm going to create an empty plain axis object that we're going to move up and down to control the animation. In this object, I'm going to use empty as a parent. So let me just use this. And for the direction, we can keep this to normal. For the strength, right now this is too much, so let me just lower this down to something I'm happy with. Okay, if I look at it now, I can mess around with this as much as I want. Okay, and if I move this up and down, you're going to see that it's basically going to have a wavy effect on the mesh. Now to make this even more nicer, I can add a subdivision surface modifier to this, and it's going to basically subdivide it. And if you want to increase the scale of this, you can go in to your texture settings and mess around with the size of this until we are happy with it. Okay, so let's say something like this I'm happy with. Let me just move this around. So let's say this is something I'm happy with. Let's go with this. Now for the materials, we're gonna go over here and delete our materials. So I'm going to make this window bigger, delete any shape keys. I don't know how this came over here, so let me just delete it. Now I'm gonna go into shader editor, and over here I'm going to delete my principal BSDF shader. Now before I do this, let me just add an RGB and copy my color to over here, and let me just connect this directly to over here. The reason why we do this is, you can see right now it gets rid of the shading. We're going to do the same with the logo. Okay, same thing with the bottom, but we're going to do it a different way, and I'll explain why. Okay, so once this is done, our color, it looks correct. Now let me just try one thing. If it looks good, we can keep it. So basically we use the layer rate, and using the face rig, which looks like this, sorry, this, I'm using color ramp to crunch the colors, and then I'm multiplying it with a slightly darker color, and basically this is going to give it shading. Now you can either do it this way or keep it flat. This is completely a stylistic choice. Okay, once this is done and I'm happy with it, we can move on to the next part of the animation. So first off, this water, it needs to pour down from top, right? So let's adjust this. So let me just create a timeline as well. Okay, so first thing, I want my water to animate when I move it. So let me just go over here to 0th frame. This is going to be blank, and then the water, it's going to fall from the top. Okay, and we can do this with a gradient layer, gradient. So I'm just gonna go over here to gradient, and let's use linear for now. You can see that this is using the wrong rotation, so I'm just going to add mapping node by pressing Ctrl T. If you have node wrangler enabled, it should happen automatically. and then you can just type in 180 degrees, and then let's just move it on the x-axis. Sorry, 90 degrees. Okay, so you can see now we're getting a gradient from up to down, and if I move this on the x-axis, you can see the black, it moves up to down, right? And this is the effect that we want. Now let's make sure whenever we use gradient, it's translating that information into transparent. So I'm going to add another shader which is called transparent BSDF, and let me just add it down over here, and I'm going to add another shader which is going to be a mix shader. Now let's add this as alpha, first, and this can be the second. And to control what part it's going to be transparent, we're going to use our gradient texture. So let me just attach this over here. Now you can see nothing happens, and that's because we're not using any blend mode. So in my materials, I'm going to change my blend mode. And you can see right away, we can see the difference. Now, right now, the effect, it's reversed. So let me go over here and add a color ramp node. And first of all, let's flip our colors. So flip color ramp, and then let me just crunch in the values so we don't get this much of a big fade. It's fine to have small, but not that big. We don't really need that big fade. Okay, so around here, I think it's fine. Now let's just move our texture all the way up so it doesn't appear. And let me just change my camera opacity, just so I don't get distracted. So in my viewport display, passport set to 1. And now let me select my cube, and at 0th frame, I'm going to add a keyframe on the X location. Then I'm going to move a few frames forward. So basically, by default, it should be around 24 frames per second. If I go over here, yeah, 24 FPS. So this is like after almost 2 seconds, it should fall down. So let me just make it fall down. So all the way down to over here. And let me just add a keyframe. So you can see now we have this animation. At any point, if I want to move this, I can just grab this and just move this anywhere. So let's say I want the first almost 1 second to be blank. Okay, looks good so far. Okay, now to make it more look like liquid, let's also move our empty object, which is controlling the liquid. So let me just see which axis would work best. Okay, so first off, let me just place it wherever my model is. Okay. I'm going to see which axis gives me the best result, and I'm going to move it in that axis. Okay, so I like what Y is doing, and I like what G is doing, right? X, not so much. I think X and Y are doing the same thing. Okay, so again, let's go to our 1 frame, and over here, add a keyframe into the location of our empty object. Let's go to 70, and again, over here, add a keyframe. Okay, yeah, I think for now 70 is fine. And at this point, I want to move it a little bit on the Y. I don't want the Y movement to be too strong. And I want to move it on the Z axis by a lot more than what I moved on the Y axis. So somewhere around here, and then I'm going to hit Y. Now you can see if I hit play, my liquid is moving. Oh, so we're moving in the other direction. Let me just move it down. Okay, so right now you can see the movement is too slow, right? So let's just speed this up. So I'm going to select my keyframes, go to Shift E, and go to linear extrapolation. Basically what this does, by default, your movement, it ends over here. But if I go into my curves, let me just make this into a view that's more understandable. If I go over here and I go Shift E, linear extrapolation, it basically draws a line and it's going to keep it moving in that direction for like until the end of times. So now if I play, you can see we're going to have an animation being played, and I can adjust the speed of this as however I want. So if I move this 30 frames back, you can see now it's falling a lot faster. Okay, and now if we have this boring information, we want to fill this up slowly. So first off, I'm going to combine both of these into one object. So now it's one object. to combine them, you select both of them. Let me just redo this. Select both of them and then press Ctrl J to combine them. So now they're one. And then in my material settings, so first I'm going to change, because I want both of these to fade in, I want to make this into one material just for my own easiness. So basically, let me just copy this color for now and let me delete this material. Now, instead of using color, I'm going to go into vertex paint. It's fine even if you do this in shaders. Just for my easiness, I'm going to use vertex paint. Now let's copy the color that I just, paste the color that I just copied and go over here, set vertex colors. And basically what it does, it paints it into blue. Now let me copy this red color and let me only select the top part, and let me go into vertex paint again, go into face select and then set vertex color again, and now basically the top is red and the bottom is blue in vertex colors. Now we can plug this information and we don't have to use this. So over here I'm gonna search for color attribute and just plug that in directly. So now if I go into material preview, it's going to show me these colors as I added them, right? This is just easier for me to manage, which is why I go using vertex color, but it's fine even if you use two RGB colors and then combine them using mist color, completely fine. Okay, so now once this is done, I'm going to open a UV editor over here and I'm going to basically unwrap this project from view. So it's a straight unwrap. Let me just scale this up. So now this is straight. We might have to adjust this, and I'm going to open a wave texture over here. Now again, I'll provide the file, but you can just create a wave texture in whatever image editing software that you use. It's nothing fancy. If I just show it to you over here, you can see it's a simple black and white image with these kind of shapes. You can make this in Blender and just render it out as a black and white image, which is what I did, but in your case it's like whatever is easier. You can also probably do this in Photoshop or whatever image editing software that you use. Now let me just add this in over here. So let me go to image texture, and for that image texture I'm going to use this image. Now let me also add my mapping node to this, and let me add a mix shader over here. Again, we're going to control the transparency using this texture, which is why I'm using mix shader. Now let me just combine this in over here. For now, we're only going to view our texture, right? You can see this is how it looks on the model. So let me just scale this to something that I like. Okay, these weird lines that are happening, again, it's because you have no connections in your mesh. So I'm just going to draw a few lines. An easier way to do this is to select everything and press Ctrl T, and that basically auto connects these, and you're going to have neater texture. So let me just unwrap this again, and now we should end up with a much better result. Okay, now basically what my goal is with this UV mapping, I don't want it to be too big, but I want it big enough so I can move in between these black and white. Do you see this? Right, and basically it's up to you how much you want your texture to be wavy. So for example, if this is too much, too less, I can add some more waves and just scale it down maybe a little. Okay, I think around here it's fine. And then I just want to make sure that there's enough white and black and white space. If it's not, you can edit this inside of whatever image editing software that you use. Something you are happy with, let's just move this up. So at the beginning, let's just see which color this is. I always get it confused, but one of these should make it transparent and the other should make it opaque. Let me add this. Same thing we did with the liquid. I'm just going to do it over here. Okay, now let's adjust our blend mode to alpha blend. You can see right now my entire model disappeared because it's in the white region, and if I slowly move into the black region, you can see it's slowly filling from the bottom, right? And this is what we want. Okay, so now with this done, let me just, so basically this is what we want to animate in this part, y-axis, and I think we can also move it on the x-axis just to give it a more wavy feel. Okay, so first thing, let me add a keyframe. So again, let me just delete all of this. Again, I'm going to go to 0, add keyframe on the x and y. Oh, sorry, not on 0. In this case, when the liquid starts hitting. Okay, and let me just move this liquid so it goes all the way out. Okay, now this is fine. Okay, now let's find the frame that we are happy with. So for example, around here, this is where I want my liquid to start filling. So I'm going to add a keyframe over here, then move forward a few frames, let's say around here, and this is where I want this to fill in all the way. Okay, let's just see how this looks. Okay, awesome. And when it's moving, I also want it to move on the x-axis, so basically it gives it a more wavy feel. I think Z should do nothing. Okay, so x-axis I'm just estimating for now, and then later I can move around my values. So let me also move this to over here. So now if I play this, okay, so let's say this is a speed I'm happy with. Now we do have one problem, and that's our liquid is falling out of our shape. We don't want it to do that. We want it to mask according to the boundary of our logo. So what we can do is go over here, select the bottom vertices, press Ctrl G and assign a new group to them. Then over here, I'm going to add another modifier, which is going to be shrink wrap. Let me just move it above. And in my vertex group, I'm going to use a vertex group I've created. For my shape, I'm going to isolate a shape from this over here. Shape D to duplicate, P to parent by selection. So now it's a separate shape, and I'm just going to extrude it back. It won't be visible because we're using an orthographic camera, but basically you can see what we're trying to do is trying to snap our shape on top of this. So you can see it neatly wraps up the shape on top of this, so the liquid will never fall out of the shape. And that's what we want. So now if I go to render view, you can see the liquid never spills out. Right. So let's just play our animation and see how this looks. Okay, awesome. Looks good so far. So now when the logo has filled up all the way, so let's find that frame. Okay, this is where the liquid should have ended. Like this should have been the last liquid. So let's go into our liquid setting. What is this doing? Okay, that's just extra. Okay, so let's go into my liquid settings, and over here, again, we have to remove our gradient. Okay, now basically what we want is to reverse the direction of our gradient, right? So if I duplicate both of these down here, let me also duplicate my gradient, and let's just see how this looks. Okay, so this is the effect that we need. If I change my rotation to 90, again, I started rotating this until I got to the rotation that I wanted, which is 990 in this case. And this gives me the direction that I want. So once I have this, now over here, I'm going to move this. Okay, so now I have two of these, right? One is the opposite direction of the other. Now when the animation is ending, we want to basically blend into this one without noticing, and because they're going to do it in the black color, we won't visually see any difference. So let me just move this all the way up to over here. So now right now this is all the way black, and then let's add a mix color over here. Let me just reconnect this. Okay, I'm going to add a mix color node. Sorry. Okay, so before this, I want this to be 100% 0, and okay, let's say around here. I want this to be 100% 0, and then around, like almost around here, I want this to be almost 1. So basically it switches from that texture to this texture, and visually we won't see any difference because it's doing it in like the black colors. Okay, now once this is done, let me just move this back, move this forward. Okay, once this is done, now let's animate our liquid ending. So I've added a keyframe around 107. let's go to over here where it fills up, and this is where our liquid should have completely ended. So something like this. Okay, awesome. Now we just need to adjust the speed of this. So let me just move this back and maybe a bit forward, and let's see how this looks. Okay, so now once this is done and we are happy with the timing of this, I think this is fine. Okay, so as soon as the liquid ends, this is where we want this to burp. So I'm gonna go into my data tab, and over here I'm gonna go into shape keys, and let's add a shape key. We can name this burp or whatever, and then let's go into edit mode, and let's just make a shape key very quickly. I'm going to switch into proportional editing and make sure connected only is turned on. If this is not turned on, if I do anything, it's going to move everything. If this is on, it's only going to move the upper half. Now I just want to move this and slightly adjust your wheel. We don't want it to move too much, we just want it to like open it slightly, something like this. Same thing with the bottom one. Let me just rotate this, move this. Right, so something like this. So now if I go from 0 to 1, you can see it looks like it's burping. Now we have a good enough burp. Now as soon as it burps, we need to also add some bubbles over here. So I'm going to go to mesh, add a cylinder, and just scale this down. Place it over here, delete the top part of the cylinder, so only we have the bottom part. Now in my particle settings, I'm going to hit new. I'm going to set the number to around 20 or 30, something like that. For the frame start, let's set it to 140. We're going to adjust the timing later on. Ending can be around 160. Lifetime 50 is fine. Okay, so basically if I play this now, first off it's too big, second it's going down. So let's fix this. I'm going to create an icosphere and scale this down, apply the scale, move it out, then go into my particle settings, go into render, change this to object, choose my instance object, which is an icosphere, right? And for the scale, let me just apply the scale of my cylinder as well. We want to use object scale. Okay, that is fine. And let me just increase the scale over here, and let me just move this out because we don't want it visible at all. Okay, now let's go over here and play with some settings. So first off, I want some scale randomness. Now how much you want this, it's completely up to you. If you want to scale this over here, you can do this as well. For now, I'm not going to mess with this. Then let's go into our field weights, and I'm going to lower the gravity because we don't want that. Now if I play my particles, they should be going up. Okay, I need to, I think, change the direction. Yeah, okay, so this is much better. Okay, so right now they are shooting instead of like going, and that's because we want to change the velocity of this. Okay, so around here something, this is what I'm happy with. Again, you can mess around with these, but these are the values that work for me. Okay, so once we have something that we like, we need to create a material for our icosphere. Okay, so over here I'm gonna I think let's go over here, make this a new collection, name this icosphere. I'm going to make two of these. One of these will be red and the other will be blue. Now let's go into shader editor. Oh, we already have one over here. For this, so for both of these, let's just use the main Pepsi material that we're using right now, and we'll edit it from there. Okay, so we want to give this a more bubble kind of material. So first thing, I'm gonna go over here, search for layer weight, and we're going to do the same thing we did for our liquid, is use this face break option to find a value that we are happy with. Let me just shade it smooth on both ends so it makes more sense. Okay, so this is what we're looking for, right? Now let's go over here and add a color ramp because we want to adjust the strength of this. And let me just move these back, delete this. For the color of this, I'm going to use the same thing I did before, vertex paint, set vertex color, object vertex paint, and for this, let me just copy the blue color over here. Okay, so basically now we should have one red and one blue. I'm just going to add both of these in, so color attribute, and let me just combine this to over here, right? So yeah, one is red, the other is blue. Now we want to control the transparency, so let's go into transparent, PSTF, sorry, And let's use a mix shader to combine both of these. Our color ramp, because we want this kind of effect, right? And now I can add a subdivision modifier to it. Same with this one. Right, now you can adjust this further if you want, but I think this is good enough. Now let me just see if how this looks. Okay, so first off, let's increase our number to about 50, and then I want to go over here, and instead of object instance, I want to use a collection instead. And for this, we want to use icosphere collection. Okay, so let me just move this further back. Again, because we're using orthographic camera, the distance won't really make a lot of difference, but I just want it behind my liquid. Okay, now that everything is done, let's also add this in. So in the original video, this was also filling in from the start. So let me just convert this into mesh, combine it together, use the same material as we did before. And then let me just do the same thing, add a decimate modifier, planar, hit apply, go into edit mode, project from view, go into UV editor, and I'm just going to move them to white. Move this to white so it slowly fills in.